Usually, when an aircraft lands, it has three ways of slowing down. These are the brakes, spoilers and reverse thrust. Today, we're testing if a 737-700 can land and stop on the runway with only the spoilers. First up, we have something absolutely ridiculous. It's Sabah Airport, which has a runway of just about 400 meters or 1,300 feet. Stopping with all three methods at full power is already a struggle here, so there is absolutely zero expectation that this will stop. Here we go. As you can see, there is no chance. The plane goes into the sea at over 100 knots. Welp, at least we decelerated 30 knots. Get out! Now, we're moving on to Oceanside Municipal Airport in California. This airport has a runway just shy of 3,000 feet, so double that of Sabah's, in other words. Now because it isn't a big airport, the runway overlay isn't actually shown, but you can roughly see that rectangular patch over there is the runway. Now I should emphasize that while I try my best to keep the conditions roughly the same for each landing, aside from the runway length, I cannot be perfect. I have tried to land each time as close to 130 knots as possible, using the same configuration each time. I have also tried to touch down in a fairly consistent position relative to the runway length, and at the same smoothness. Spoilers are deployed upon touchdown, and rudder is used to maintain centerline. Here we are, touching down at Oceanside Municipal. We can see that the runway ends about there. And at about 60 knots, off we go. Time to move on, and next up we have a 5,000 feet runway. This is Mac McClellan Palomar Airport, just a short distance away from Oceanside Municipal. As mentioned, we have a runway about 5,000 feet long here. Again, there's no overlay since it's a small airport, but you can see the runway via the satellite imaging. Let's see how it does. We're touching down here, 130 knots again, and spoilers are out. Usually spoilers work best in conjunction with brakes since the spoilers kill the lift from the wings, bringing the weight of the plane onto the gear, allowing the brakes to be effective. The spoilers only provide a meaningful amount of drag at high speed, and become increasingly inefficient as the speed decreases. Here, we are exiting the runway at a speed not much lower than the last one, at about 50 knots. So much for the extra 2,000 feet of runway. Here we are now, landing at runway 22 right in Helsinki. This runway is just about 10,000 feet, so again, double the last one. The typical 737 landing roll is around 4,000 feet, so with optimal deceleration, we actually would have been able to stop on the last runway. But as you should know by now, we only have our spoilers for this test. We've touched down already. Let's start a time lapse, because this is going to take a very long time. And we've exited the overlay, but satellite imagery still shows that there is a paved section here. The final section here might also be an EMAS, I don't quite know. But we're going to count it into the actual runway. You know what, let's zoom in on the wheels. The aircraft is moving so slowly now that it's extremely difficult to tell if it's actually moving or not, but if we zoom in on the wheels, we can very clearly see that if they're spinning, the plane is moving. And we come to a stop. Let's pan around so you can see where the end of the runway is and how close we were to it. And let's zoom in on the map here. You can see that we have a tiny section left. The 737 has successfully stopped, using only spoilers, on Helsinki's 10,000-foot runway. So, now we know. A 10,000-foot runway is just enough for the 737-700 in GOFS to come to a stop. There was a tiny section that we left, and I didn't touch down at the runway threshold, so maybe it's possible with 9,000 feet if everything is perfect. If you enjoyed this and would like to see more crazy challenges, do consider subscribing. You'll get notified and it helps me out a lot. As always, thanks for flying with Avination, and have a supercalifragilisticexpialidocious day.